in order to perform it. You cannot go up there just to perform something and you don't have the understanding of the language. And often we have many tutors that will teach you for years. They will teach you the importance of a song, the importance of a kinesthetic movement, these sort of things. And it's all to do with tribal groups, the way that they engage, they perform with each other. It's about laws, beliefs, their values, customary practices, and so at this gathering, that's what I was looking for, to say, okay, the younger generation is losing the language. So how much of this language is coming back? How much of their identity is you know, back in the community, and that the younger generation is involved with cultural events, and that. So that was another key purpose, and also the importance of sustaining culture. Sustaining culture means sustaining identity and maintaining your culture, because when culture is taken away, the language is too, and your existence really. And so, I decided that it was important to find out myself. I've been here. I'm a fluent speaker of the language, and the questions that I had myself is, how did I maintain my own identity? And no one here spoke when I came here. I mean, I never even heard anyone speaking their own first tongue, their own language when I came here, other than English and French. So again, as we know through changes, through the history, and that many people lost their identity, they lost their cultural ways through residential schools, and that's why. I mean, if I recall the residential schools, and that you didn't hear about the residential schools, it was kept hush-hush. And so I couldn't imagine, my kids were born in the 70s, and I just could not imagine children being taken away, the identity, the language, and that. So that is why I think that it's important to not just see your culture just through a language or in classes, or but because the Aboriginal people here, as well as many Indigenous people, they perform through their songs, through their drumming, through their ceremonies, their prayers and incantation. And so we're looking at the knowledges that's transmitted in the performers or those who are watching the performing arts, as well as how we sustain, how do we include people that's a big part of helping performing arts, or helping to maintain, preserve and sustain cultural identity. So these were my two main questions, and and my theoretical framework. And I asked that, when you're researching, you always have these questions, because researchers, we are searching. We're searching to answer something. And so in my theoretical framework, I was looking at these key things of who should be involved. And this is, like I said, this is one of many frameworks. So I looked at the family. I looked at my sub-tribal group, and I looked at my main tribal group, which is Iwi. Iwi means main tribal group. And I looked at the canoe itself. And the reason why the canoe plays a big part is because the canoe was the one that took our people over from Hawaii. That's where we come from. The Polynesian people come from Hawaii, and moved us to areas such as New Zealand or Aotearoa, or another place called the Land of the Long White Cloud. So we're visitors too there in New Zealand. There were other people called the Moriori people that were living in New Zealand. So in my framework, as I was thinking about how do I sustain identity, why is that important, this is what I had to think about, these 4 key things, because the canoe itself was really talking about space and time. It was leading me to things, beliefs, such as Polynesian people believe in many deities, and so we're talking about things that existed, things that had changed through paradigms and eras through back in certain days. And how I also thought that sustaining tribal identity, and this is all according to the people that I had interviewed, was looking at the importance of gathering, which is a hui, the importance of coming to that meeting place, and the importance of the place of learning. So Wānanga is a higher place of learning, meaning that at one time, the Wānanga place, which is the higher place of learning, was only used for those who were chosen. And so chosen meaning that they had skills to use, you know, in the arts. And you'll see much of our, on the DVD, our performing arts, is we use a lot of dexterity, we use kayahas, where they use poise, they use poise to strengthen your hands, which was used for battle in that. And so the importance of these places, these 3 things of how we have to maintain tribal identity. And also what was involved, again, were key things. And if any of you have read any of Linda's book, Decolonizing Methodologies, there's other books here too. Maggie Kovacs, you know, she does a fine job too of looking at indigenous methodologies. Looking at the tribal dialect, also the tribal narratives, and looking at the environment, the influence of the environment around the language, around behaviors, also looking at genealogy and the geographical locations, and also looking at customs and protocols. Now, within indigenous worldviews, ways of knowing or being, is that they do not separate the genealogy and geography. It is very interconnected. It creates the existence, their ways of being. That's how they act, that's how they perform, and the stronger influence of that geographical area. And so, which relates to maintaining kinship ties, the importance of having kinship ties. And so, coming back to sustainability, why that, you know, why it was important in my studies, was looking at these approaches, different approaches. In my methodology, I do use qualitative methodology, but I use what we call the Kaupapa Maori research approach. Kaupapa means school of philosophy. And so in the Kaupapa Maori research, and most Maori people who are looking at trying to weave their stories and looking at narratives, looking at autoethnography, you will see them use the philosophy, so Maori philosophy in their research approach, mainly because this kaupapa Maori allows 7 things to do its job. So it's qualitative in nature. It's also transportable. It can, you know, anybody, whether Maori or non-Maori people can use that. It is not only for university academics, it can be for community, it can be for families, it can be used by anybody. It needs to be transformative in practice. It has to be just not that it's just a methodology. It needs to say, and it needs to be including something that, okay, here we are, we're talking about it. Let's be reflective, let's be reflexive, and let's take what it is that we know and let's move it along. Let's not just stay in this area. It has to allow for growth. It has to allow that people can take it and easily work with it. And it has to be respectful. It has to be used in a respectful way, much like Linda uses in her 7 cornerstones of the approaches to going in and working in Indigenous communities, where she says we have to do face-to-face. We must, when we are interviewing, going into communities, you know, as a researcher, a face-to-face, not the survey online or monkey survey or this and that. The face-to-face for Indigenous people is extremely important, because it's the sense of making that connection. It's the sense of, I can see you, and tell me what it is that you know, that you want me to tell you. Let's share, let's have this relationship. Because at the end of the day, respectfully, that's what you want to do. You want to build a good relationship so that you're able to take information that is going to be useful and beneficial to the community.